Welcome, ambitious little mortals. I am your shadow walker, stepping out from the shifting mists of Niflheim to be your professor today for this explainer. We're diving right into a dark masterclass on the catastrophic folly of shortcuts. We're going to dissect the very anatomy of mortal folly through two gloriously grim Gothic parables. We'll explore exactly why your species is just so deeply terrified of hard work and, well, what happens when you try to bypass the slow, agonizing grind of true mastery.
Our lesson actually begins with a wager. High up in the Empyrean, where the golden light meets the dark, I sat with the High Master, a figure who possesses the stern wisdom of Wotan himself. I looked down at the mortal plane, full of you striving, sweating humans, and I made him a bet. I wagered that, given the chance, mortals will always choose the unearned power of the abyss over the slow path of discipline. I mean, why do the heavy lifting when magic offers a back door, right? So, let's look at this concept of unearned power. This is the deliberate bypassing of deep expertise in favor of a dangerous, short-term magical shortcut. And what's truly fascinating about this, it inevitably destroys the user. Every single time. It doesn't matter if your intentions are grand and cosmic or just pathetic and lazy. You see, the universe has a very strict accounting system. When you skip the discipline, you completely fail to build the internal architecture required to actually hold the power you've just summoned. Moving on to Section 1, the Cartographer of the Infinite, Swallowing the Star. Our first case study is Friedrich the Scholar. Now, Friedrich was a man rotting away in a dusty library that just reeked of ancient parchment. He had exhausted absolutely all mundane human academic knowledge, yet his soul was still this hollow cavern. Friedrich suffered from what we call macro-level ambition. This isn't just, wanting a promotion at work. No, this is a desperate, calculated intellectual hunger to possess infinite cosmic understanding. He perfectly mirrors Faust's double-edged pursuit of a divine purpose, one that becomes completely unmoored from moral boundaries and physical limitations. Just consider the breathtaking scale of Friedrich's intellectual hubris here. Mundane academic knowledge wasn't cutting it, so he sought a shortcut through magic far more dangerous than simple runes. He summoned a pulsing star shard right out of the shimmering void, and instead of studying it like a good scholar, he defiantly swallowed the star. Why? Because he wanted that illusion of short-term gratification. He wanted to instantly gain infinite knowledge and become the cartographer of the universe, without actually walking the infinite miles required to map it. And hey, for one glorious second, it actually worked. Friedrich saw the birth of galaxies, the hidden architecture of the soul, the whole shebang. But then the master sorcerer appeared to intervene, offering a stern kind of mercy as Friedrich's physical form literally began crumbling into cinerous ashes from the white-hot fire of the star burning inside him. The master sorcerer posed this brilliant question: what good is the map if the cartographer has burned away? It's a fantastic question because the cruel mechanical truth of the universe is simply this: the mortal mind is not a vessel for the infinite. Sure, Friedrich had the map of everything, but because he lacked the necessary vessel, because he hadn't built his own capacity through slow, agonizing discipline, the heat of that unearned knowledge just incinerated his very identity. He tried to speak the truths he saw, but his hubris completely blinded him to the basic mechanics of reality. He had absolutely no container for the light. So, Friedrich learned the individual lesson of Faust the hard way. The human desire for knowledge and progress is noble, sure, but it is deeply, deeply dangerous. Trying to escape your mortal limits through magical loopholes doesn't bring you genuine fulfillment. It really just transforms your ambition into a double-edged sword of despair, bringing profound grief. Fleeing your boundaries, that's just a recipe for self-immolation. All right, on to Section 2, the weight of the stone and the shadow, evading the mundane. Now, in a completely different tower, we find a lazy magician's apprentice, who, ironically enough, was also named Friedrich. His Wotan-like master had simply tasked him with moving a literal mountain of heavy stones by hand from the garden over to the high wall. But this novice was driven by a pathetic, honestly kind of comical, micro-level ambition. This is that mundane, foolish ignorance that drives a desire to just escape minor daily drudgery and hard physical labor. It's the ambition not to be a god, but just to avoid carrying a bucket. Of course, as soon as his master left, I appeared right in the corner of his eye. I leaned in and whispered this little temptation into his ear. Why labor like a beast when the shadow can work for you? And, predictably, completely proving my point to the High Master, by the way, he instantly abandoned the discipline of the stone. He traced the shadow runes of Mephistopheles to invoke his dark double, hoping he could just take a nap while his shadow did all the heavy lifting. And this brilliantly illustrates how a total lack of competence turns a shortcut into a cascading disaster. Friedrich the Apprentice knew the words to initiate the shadow process, sure, but in his lazy haste, he never bothered to check if he possessed the knowledge to stop it. The shadow moved the stones, yeah, but fueled by mindless, chaotic energy, it didn't stop at the wall. It began tearing down the tower itself, trying to build a wall all the way to the clouds. Because knowing how to start a magic is vastly different from mastering it. Panic immediately seized the apprentice. Blinded by his own hubris, his rational problem-solving skills completely evaporated. He grabbed a silver ritual blade and tried to cut the shadow in two, thinking that would kill the magic. Instead, the shadow split into two separate, much darker entities, working twice as fast to dismantle the world around him. His little attempt to fix his unearned magic literally doubled the destruction. Which brings us to Section 3, Divine Hunger versus Mundane Sloth, the Anatomy of Mortal Folly. Let's dissect how both flavors of ambition lead to the exact same ruin. Notice the delicious contrast here. On one side, we have the scholar's divine hunger, driven by calculated intellectual desperation to map the infinite. On the other side, the apprentice's mundane sloth, driven by foolish ignorance just to escape moving a rock. One sought the stars, the other sought a nap. Yet, they both failed catastrophically. Why? Because they prioritized the destination over the actual journey of mastery. Just look at these shared consequences. Despite their wildly differing motivations, both of our fools hit the brutal wall of their own incompetence. Their hubris blinded them to rational problem-solving. They entirely ignored the strict limits of what they were actually capable of handling. And in the end, both had to be saved from total annihilation by the stern mercy of a high master, a figure of hierarchical wisdom who had to swoop in, clean up their messes, and teach them the terrifying danger of unearned power. Section 4. The weight of true mastery. Salvation through striving. This brings us, somewhat begrudgingly on my part, to the ultimate truth of the High Master's design. When the Master Sorcerer assigned the apprentice his chores, he said, "For in the weight of the stone, you find the weight of the self." That right there is the core thesis of our Dark Masterclass. True expertise demands the agonizingly slow path of deep discipline, profound humility, and strict boundaries. You simply cannot forge a self capable of wielding great power without first pressing that self against the heavy, unyielding resistance of the mundane world. The mechanics of your salvation are tedious, but they are undeniable. As we draw from Goethe's epic, tragic play Faust, the ultimate moral and the lesson of our grim parables today is that man is redeemed only through continuous, active striving. You have to dedicate your labor toward higher purposes and absolutely abandon the passive surrender to complacency and shortcuts. You have to endure the work. You have to build the vessel before you can ever safely claim the light. So, as our masterclass concludes and I fade back into the shadows to report the results of my wager, I leave you to ponder this final question. Will you embrace the agonizing weight of the stone to slowly build your mastery, or will you look for a shortcut and burn away chasing the star? Take a really good look at your own ambitions today, mortals. I'll be waiting in the dark to see just how long it takes for your hubris to ignite.